Geddes Ward on behalf of Truth Seekers North East for coming back and doing a talk for us here on this particular subject, which I'm going to find fascinating, aliens on the moon. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Neil.
Thank you very much. You feel that? Well, thank you very much for another warm welcome back to Newcastle. Those who saw me before know that this is my second visit now here. So obviously the first one was a practice run, so I think I've got the hang of it now, I hope. Although I did wake up this morning actually thinking, okay, I'm here to do a talk. What am I actually doing a talk on? So I looked on the Facebook group and thought, oh my god, it says aliens on the moon. I better start doing some research. So I was having a couple of crumpets and a cup of tea. And so I got my telescope out, looked out the window, and I saw the moon, took a few notes, and I thought, well, that'll feel about half an hour. So I thought, what can I do for the rest of it? So I thought, I know, there's one bloke who will know a few answers, and that's a guy that you know well, that's Ben Edwin Jones. So you've obviously seen him before here, a good friend of mine. So I quickly messaged him on Facebook. I says, Ben, you've got to help me. I've got to do a talk about aliens on the moon. What do you know? Can you do something? Send something through. So he goes, give me a few minutes. And he sent me through a YouTube link. So I watched it, made some notes. And I thought, I don't think it's enough. But I said, well, look, Ben, thanks very much for sending through the clangers. I don't think it's going to help. So I set to task and quickly scrambled together this talk for you. So I hope you enjoy it. And at the end, we'll do some questions. And if there's more time, you know, if there's more time before now and the medium later on, I can cover other stuff if there's time. If not, maybe I can do that as another talk. Okay? So anyway, this is Aliens on the Moon, and I first did this at the High Wycombe Paranormal Meetup Group, which is a group I run in Buckinghamshire. And that's me there a few years ago, and this is the poster I did for it. So it's the Bricklayers Arms, and of course, you know, you pay £5 to get in, and I charge £5 down south. So we try and balance the books here, budget-wise. Everyone pays the same amount to see it. But for this time, you get a lot more images for your money, because there's obviously more research done on it. So anyway, you've perhaps seen some of this before. I do artwork and things like that, so weird sketches, fantasy designs, conceptual artwork. That's me a few years ago with some of the artwork I do. There's a picture here if anyone wants to come and see it. It's a more recent image, a few years ago I painted that, than the ones you see on the screen there. But they're done in oils on boards, and it's kind of, you can see the sort of subject matter, fantasy artwork, which is Lord of the Rings type of stuff, you know, that's the kind of stuff I'm into as well. There's my girlfriend there, Monica, and myself painting some pictures together with our dog Roxy there with her Kong. She's always getting in the way, but love her to bits. And that's a picture there done by Monica, because I was doing a UFO picture at the time, and she said, I want to do a UFO picture. So she put together that one, and she actually raced ahead and beat me to it. So she beat my UFO picture, and that's my one once it's complete, which is Flying Saucer Over the Desert. I do have the original in the car. If anyone wants to see the original, I can go and get it later on. There might be a print or two in there in the box, but if anyone wants the original, just ask me and I'll go and get it later on. Yeah, so that was me when I was about 14. I actually appeared on the BBC TV programme, Why Don't You? Does anyone remember that? Later on I appeared on Crime Watch, but that's another story. But yeah, because of this interest in sort of science fiction fantasy, I never had any money as a kid to go out and buy model kits and things like that. So I just thought, well, let's try and make my own. I used to find anything like yogurt pots and washing up liquid bottles, shampoo bottles, anything that looked interesting shapes. And I said, Mum, buy that shape of whatever it was, and she'd buy it, and then I'd empty out the container into something more usable for her, and then I would take the plastic bottle and paint it up and stick bits on it and things. I started to get more... Is
that where Fairy got that advert from?
Yes, probably, yeah. See, they pinched it off me. They pinched it off me. But I started to get more adventurous with this sort of stuff. I used to actually start making the construction out of these out of cardboard and folding them around. And this centre section was actually supported here. That was actually a big long cardboard tube. The sort of you put posters in to send through the post. And it's strong enough to act almost like a spine, if you like, to support this model. And then running through this section here and that section there were 2 bamboo canes from my dad's garden. And if anyone remember those gold margarine tubs, gold butter or something, they were those just with holes in, and the bamboo canes went through there and then it came out the sides of these engines. And these were, I can't remember, just sort of cardboard boxes from somewhere. So I just sprayed it up with car paint and dressed it up with little bits of plastic kit. And that was the one they featured on the BBC TV programme. So I started getting, starting off little models and then getting more confident. But of course I'd run out of room, wouldn't I? So that was the sort of the largest size I went to. But yeah, I still do these sort of scratch-built things from now and again. And there's another one there made out of cardboard. From a distance they look all right. I mean, if you went right up and close, you'd see things wrong with them. But they're okay for the age I was at the time. I also do as well as talking about the paranormal stuff, I also run something called the Paranormal Peep Show, which is a radio show, or a podcast, people call them now, on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. So remember that, there's lots of interesting paranormal discussions on there, different hosts, and I run it with this gentleman here called Andy Chaplin. I met him in a psychic workshop about 8 years ago, and it's actually unusual to go to a psychic workshop for a bloke, because most of the time it's always women there, and I always find that I was the odd one out. And so when I met Andy at this thing, I thought, oh my god, there's another guy here. So we kind of worked together, but we also found out that we did impersonations. He would do a funny voice and I'd do a funny voice. So instead of us trying to do concentration and doing readings on each other, we started doing voices to each other and things like that. And well, they know about my voice talents because they've been...
Where's some gummidge? Give them a sample.
They've been getting me to do words of gummidge all evening. So, as ups later on, I'm going, that's perfect saying, that's that there chocolate.
So you can see what age I'm at. Anyway, so recently we interviewed this chap called Marcus Allen, who talks about the Apollo moon landings, landings, fact or fiction, and he goes with the idea that the Apollo moon landings are not quite what they're seeing. Were they actually fake? Was the photography fake? Maybe the Apollo space rocket that went up from NASA, or sort of Cape Canaveral, maybe that was genuine. I mean, it certainly looked genuine, but once the pictures came back from the moon, people started to find anomalies with them. So he discussed that with us on our radio show, but the problem with that is that you're discussing photographs on a radio show, so you can't actually picture what we're talking about. So we went another stage, and we actually did something on YouTube, which you guys can look out for. It's called the Apollo Detectives, where we put together a team of people that have researched into the Apollo anomalies, as I'll call them. Ben Evelyn Jones sort of co-hosted it, and I was the sort of producer, if you like, that put it all together. And we've recorded about 4 of them. The 4th one will be going up very soon, where we're talking for about 3 hours, and everyone's presenting their documents online. It's done via Skype, and we're talking about the Apollo anomalies and what's possible in space, what isn't, and that kind of stuff. So for anyone that wants to know more about the Apollo moon landings, fact or fiction, search out the Apollo Detectives on YouTube, and you'll see us discussing these things. Now recently, because it's been the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landings, in July 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin supposedly landed on the Sea of Tranquility, which is on the moon, not a seaside resort. They landed on the Sea of Tranquility, and it's been the anniversary of that, back in July the 20th. And so there's been this exhibition going around called, well, it's just called the Moon, I think. And it's basically this giant inflatable moon, about the size of a house. And what they've done is they've taken the photographs of the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which goes around in orbit around the moon. It takes loads and loads of pictures of the moon. And from all those pictures it's taken, they built up like a jigsaw, if you like, putting all these pictures together and managed to put it around the circumference of this giant spherical balloon, which is this giant imitation balloon. So I went and saw it in Dorset a few weeks ago, and I took a photograph of this giant balloon, but there's the real moon 240,000 miles away, so I thought it was quite a nice little touch of the 2 moons together. And that actually appeared in a local paper. A lot of people liked it, so it's published in a paper. So to give you an idea of what it actually looks like, that's the size of the moon. I don't know if you can see there's people just standing there in the shadows below this moon, and it's suspended on a crane. On this particular instance, because they take it around the country, it's suspended on a crane in the grounds of a castle, and you could walk around there and look at the moon and just have a good look at it, basically. So I walked all around it. I couldn't see any alien bases, I couldn't see any clangers or anything like that, so I went home bitterly disappointed. But that was a nice evening out, actually, so I took quite a few photographs. So anyway, I've had an interest in the moon. There's another picture that you can see the size of the people there. You can sort of see the size of the scale. and what it was like. That was earlier in the evening. It's worth going to. If you ever see it happening around your area, it's worth going over to it with the camera. Now this is an evolution of the moon. This is the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that took the photographs of the moon you just saw in the previous slide, and this is NASA's version of how they believe the moon came together over a period of billions of years. Okay? So think of Star Trek, and it's a bit very much like that. Now, I should be expecting to hear sound, but I don't know why. Let's see if I can get some sound on that. I think that sound earlier on. No, it's not having sound. Never mind. Okay. Might have to skip some of this, but I'll basically describe what is happening. There it is. It's showing the moon is being formed into a big hot plasma ball, so they're saying, being hit by various asteroids and meteorites over a period of billions of years. It doesn't all happen overnight. And there you can see some more meteorites flying down towards it and striking it. And it's saying it's 3.6 billion years ago, I believe that is. It's interesting how they can actually work all this out according to age, isn't it? How they can sort of say, yeah, that definitely happened, or they believe it happened so many billions of years ago. And you can see all this stuff flying out into space, which ends up as maybe meteorites falling into our Earth. I mean, they actually found meteorites in Antarctica, which they believe come from the moon. And the reason is it's things like that, that the explosions of the moon throw these things out into space, and eventually the gravity of the Earth pulls them in. And the reason they go to Antarctica to find them is that these things lay out on the snow there, and you can see the black rocks, literally, they're easy to pick. Whereas here, in the earth and the grass and the trees, it's so much harder to find meteorites, and there's the huge things crashing into lakes and things. So there we go, more meteorites flashing through the sky. I wonder if I actually took that off, that might make a difference. No, it's not making any difference. I was just thinking that might make a difference to the thing there. So there's more meteorites there, hitting the moon, and these dark shapes is where they believe that the different sort of lava came to the surface and cooled, and so that's where you get the alleged face of the man in the moon forming from these shapes, where you try and make shapes with your mind and things like that. So that's what they think how the moon came about, today's moon, as we see it today. Okay, so we'll go on to the next slide. Now, that's NASA's version of how they believe it came about. But there's a book that I read about 3 years ago called Who Built the Moon by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler. Now, they've studied the moon in quite a lot of detail, and the statistics of how the moon came about and the measurements of the moon are quite a bedazzlement to have, really. It's like, this is almost really freakily weird, and I'll just read some of their notes there. It says, the moon revolves exactly 1/100th of the speed that the Earth turns on its axis, not 50, 25 or whatever, it's 100. It's a nice big round figure. And the moon is exactly 400 times smaller than the sun is, and precisely 400 times closer to the Earth. So that means that when you have an eclipse, when the moon passes in front of the sun, it actually just blocks it out perfectly. It's the right size to move over it. It's not like a small bit and there it is. It actually passes right in front of it just at this point in time. And when it gets to a certain point, you see that little hazy glow around the sun, and that's when they can take photographs of it. You get the diamond ring effect and stuff like that. They also discovered that the moon possesses little or no heavy metals and has no core. And in fact, many specialists suspect that the moon is hollow. And if our moon did not exist, nor would we. I mean, for instance, we have tides, don't we, that causes the tides rise and fall as the moon goes around the Earth. And we are affected by the lunar gravity as it moves around us. I mean, we've heard of the word lunatic, where supposedly, statistically, more people do crazier things when there's a full moon. And I'm thinking that's an interesting thing. Is it the effect of the gravity, or is it the brightness of the moon that's causing people to behave in a way? But they've actually done studies. There's more crimes committed on a full moon. So, and of course we have the legends of the werewolf on a full moon. So there must be something to this sort of thing. So if our moon did not exist, nor would we, experts are now agreed that high life only develops on Earth because the moon is exactly what it is and where it is. And interesting, I mentioned about the moon being so close to the Earth that it just blots out the sun at a certain distance. They say that the moon is moving away an inch a year, which eventually that means that eventually we won't be getting eclipses the way that we see them today. So maybe in 400 years' time, we'll have still eclipses, but it won't be the effect that we're seeing today. And they can measure the differences, how we see eclipse today to how it will be in 400 years' time. They're a completely different thing. I mean, it doesn't worry me that the moon's going to be moving further out. I suppose the tides will get a bit lower now and again. It means I can paddle safely. So, no more armbands for me. Anyway, so that's the moon there with the, these are called mares. This is where you've got those large lava sections that came up. Now, it says Tranquillitarius or something like that. That is the Sea of Tranquility. That's supposedly where Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin landed in July 1969. Now, the Apollo missions tended to land in this area all around here. So they only went to the side of the moon that we see. Now, what I'm going to be talking about later on is the other side of the moon, mostly, okay? Because we didn't see the other side of the moon. No one can see the other side of the moon because we're locked with the moon. So as it goes around in orbit to us, we're revolving around at the same time. So we only ever see one side of the moon. People commonly refer it to the dark side of the moon. But in fact, it is lit up by the sun, but we just can't see it on certain occasions, okay? The Russians did send a probe there and actually took photographs. Now, why have I got an interest in the moon? Well, I've always seen it. It's free to look at, isn't it? You know. I remember as a kid, back in the mid-70s, that I was at school one day in the playground. And I remember looking at the moon. Sometimes you can see it in the daytime sky. And I remember looking at the moon, and I saw this object. And so what I've done here in Photoshop, I've reproduced what I saw because it makes it easy to describe. So this is not the actual event I saw. This is merely my interpretation of how I remember seeing it. I saw the moon in the sky, and next to it, I could see a bright object. And it wasn't there just for a second or two, or you know, 5 minutes. It was there all day. And I thought, what is it? I kept seeing it during my lunchtime. I thought, what is that? I was so curious. And I did have a telescope, but I had to wait till about 4:15 to get home, run upstairs, grab my telescope, focus on it and look through it and see what was that object. And all I could see was just, it looked like a bright star to me. But I thought, well, what is it? Now, some people suggested, well, it's Venus, isn't it? I said, well, I can understand you thinking that, but remember, I was seeing this during the daytime at my lunch hour between 12 and 1 o'clock. Venus doesn't start to appear in a different part of the sky till at least sort of 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, depending on the time of year. They call it the evening star or something, you see. So I've never seen it before, and I've never seen it since. Now, if someone comes up and says, actually, you've seen something that happens every 40 years and it's where it lines up, then fair enough. But it just struck my curiosity. So, you know, some people might say it's a UFO, some people might say it's a planet, a star, I don't know. But it was just a very peculiar thing to see such a bright object in the daytime as well as the moon. I've never seen it since. Okay, so there's various anomalies on the moon that have been discovered over the years. So people have been looking at the moon through their telescopes, which are much more powerful than my one. And they can go right up to craters and look at them, and then record them over a period of years and catalogue them, so that other astronomers later on will come along and look at their recordings and compare them with the more recent ones. Some people have described seeing coloured fogs, powerful lighting perpendicular to the surface. They've seen craters or areas with lighting. They sometimes call it patch. And they say a good example is a crater at Landsberg A. But I hope you know where that is, because I don't. What else have we got there? Fixed illumination points, white or coloured. These points are sometimes single or multiple in a crater, or in two craters, or at places distant. And some people have seen flashing lights and twinkling stars, all sorts of things in craters. I remember there was a report, I think, that some monks saw what they believed to be an explosion on the moon in the Middle Ages, and actually drew a picture of it. 3 monks were observing the moon, not with a telescope, they just saw it happen. The most likely explanation, it was struck by a large asteroid or meteorite at that time.
Reval Abbey, 11th century.
Sorry?
Reval Abbey, 11th century.
Oh, you know that one? Ah, okay, I knew it was somewhere in the Middle Ages. Yeah, thank you. So this is a Photoshop rendition of what someone saw through their telescope. It's not the actual photograph they took, because this was done in 1824 and they didn't fix cameras to telescopes at that time. So this is October the 18th, 1824, and this person saw an appearance of multicoloured lights or points in the Aristarchus crater, and you can see them there. Now we're going to come back to this crater later on. They saw these objects, different coloured lights, and I think they'd drawn them at the time. And so with the drawing, some person has cleverly done it in Photoshop and rendered what was possibly what they saw. Now, what is that, for instance? You know, why should we be seeing lights in craters? There's supposedly nothing on the moon, but different people with no agenda have cited these things. Now, on February the 20th in 1877, a single white line appears in the Exodus crater for a period of 1 hour, and that's almost the length of the crater. Now, I don't know how far that is across, but say that's a mile. I mean, think of the meteor crater in Arizona. That's a mile across. So let's assume that's a mile across. That is a large point of white. You know, possibly a mile across, maybe less, maybe more. It's a huge bloody long white line, and what's it all about? You know, that shouldn't be there, should it? But that's what was recorded. Now, June the 24th in 1954, back to the Aristarchus crater, which is the one we saw earlier with the tiny points of light. This time it's filled with a gleam blue purple blade, and that means a glow of blue light or purple light in this area here. So this particular crater seems to be having some activity over the past 150 years or so. Again, what is it? And it's interesting that when NASA sends these probes around to go around, they don't actually think, well, hang on, we've got a record here as a blue glowing light in this crater. Let's go and take a look. They seem to sort of steer right and go past it. And it's like the same with Mars. Every time someone points something interesting out in Mars, where do they put their rovers? They put it on the other side of the planet, completely different side. You're thinking, why aren't they taking an interest? Again, 1964, the Aristarchus crater. Again, we've got a blue foggy light appearing in it. There's a large kind of cluster there in the centre, which would probably be the size of a mountain or something. And they've got this large cluster of light. Now, could this be some sort of gaseous things that are being erupted from the moon? There has been reports where things are being ejected from the moon, maybe molten gases or lava or something that might be coming out of the moon's surface. I'm not a geologist, as I have to say, so I don't know about the insides of the moon on any geological perspective. But you're trying to put a rational explanation. We don't want to automatically say, oh my God, it must be aliens having a stir fry or something. It's something's happening there, and it could be very, very natural, but it's just not mentioned much. But NASA have got a whole catalogue of lunar anomalies that they don't really talk about too much. Now, 7 white points which form the Greek letter gamma in the Littrow crater. Now, the Littrow crater is one of the areas where I think it was the last moon mission of 1972. They went to Taurus Littrow, which I think must be that area. So again, these 7 lights, what are they? Are they UFOs, aliens, flying saucers, or just lights? You know, if they're there 1 minute and gone the next, something's making them appear there. Is there an intelligence behind it to make it appear there, or is it some natural anomaly? You know, like we might get gas escaping out of volcanoes that glows because of the plasma. Is there something like that happening on the moon? I don't know. It needs to be really investigated. They're calling the moon a dead world, but it doesn't seem to be, looking from this evidence anyway. Now, has anyone heard of the Brookings Report? Okay. It's an institution in America, and they advised NASA just prior to really when NASA got their act together and started going into space. One of the things that was considered, well, if we start sending people into space or to the moon or probes to Mars and Venus, what happens if we see something we shouldn't see? What happens if we see aliens or evidence of aliens? So they commissioned this institution in America, which became known as the Brookings Report, to sort of report on it. What's the likeliest outcome? How would people react? And its report proposed studies on the implications of, get my words right, peaceful space activities, I'll say, for human affairs, to beware of social economic chaos resulting from alien artefacts found on the moon or Mars. As the 1938 War of the Worlds radio broadcast traumatized America. And if anyone doesn't know about that, back in 1938, Orson Welles, the famous radio and film director, he had put on a play of the War of the Worlds, a dramatisation, but he did it as almost if it was a live news report. And so he was getting people to act, oh my God, the aliens are here, they're landing now, they're people from Mars, we're being killed, run everybody, run. And people listened to that broadcast and they thought they was tuning into a real live news broadcast, and it caused absolute panic. People were heading for the hills, taking their shotguns and things like that, and stocking up on food. They thought they were being invaded. So, based upon that, this is why they wanted to sort of investigate, if we did actually find something, what would be the result in society? And I think this is partially why they've kept a lid mostly on the UFO stuff, because we've got things like religions. I know that, what's his name? Sir Winston Churchill was very interested in UFOs, but he asked things to be prohibitive from being released to the public, because he said he didn't want to upset the religions, or the religions would fall on their head, basically. It would cause chaos. And of course, during the time of the war, when people started to report these signs of UFOs, it wasn't a good time to say there's also possibly another enemy out there that we don't know nothing about. I mean, there was a report that they had a Lancaster bomber footage filming a UFO right up close, and the words were so you could see the nuts and bolts of it. Now, obviously UFOs don't have nuts and bolts, but that's the analogy they gave to say how close they were to this flying device, saucer, craft, whatever. And Winston Churchill ordered the film to be hidden away or destroyed, so that no one would know about it. I mean, obviously people have talked about it since, so someone must have leaked it somehow. But yeah, Winston Churchill put a cap on all this sort of stuff. So he didn't want to cause panic during the wartime, and I think all the other countries, like America, maybe Russia's slightly more open, they're kind of testing the waters now, I think, with our reactions to this kind of thing. Has anyone seen 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Now, it's quite an old film, it's made in 1968, but the basic story behind that was that they discovered an artefact on the moon. And it was a great big monolith, you know, sort of 20 feet high or something. And at the beginning of the film, where it showed the ape-man sequence, they discovered the, I think it's the Dawn of Man sequence they call it, where the apes are throwing bones about and things like that, and they discovered this monolith there. And then when man had progressed over a period of maybe 200,000 years, they got to the space age, and they had reached the moon. And it's when they reached the moon that it was like a signalling device the aliens had put there. It was the next posting to then go on to Jupiter. I think in the story in the book it was going to Saturn, but they made it Jupiter in the film. And it was kind of leading mankind with like snippets to sort of come and follow the trail, and these monoliths were there. Now in the film they sort of said, obviously we're keeping this under wraps, we're not telling the public. On the moon base where it's discovered, we're saying that there's been a breakout of a plague or a disease, and so this moon base is now off limits to spaceships coming here. And so there's a media blackout, and no one's going to know about this. And that was the basis of that film, and that's why they ended up going to Jupiter, where they discovered more monoliths and things like that. So really, the Brookings report was kind of basing itself on this kind of hypothesis about how will people panic or react to this kind of knowledge of aliens. Now, over the last 50 years, I mean, if you went back to the wartime, you would be not really hearing about little green men or anything like that at all. But then in the last sort of 70 years plus, since Roswell and the man landing on the moon, we're hearing more about it. We're getting more exposure to science fiction programs, and we're seeing UFO reports in newspapers now, things like that. So I wonder, rather than just declaring it, oh yeah, UFOs are real, aliens are real, we're perhaps being given a testing amount of drip, drip, drip information to slowly acclimatise ourselves to this idea. You know, if they announced on the news tonight, hey, we've discovered aliens, they're real, you say, well, yeah, we've known about it for a long time. It wouldn't be such a shock, would it? And even the Catholic Church have said now, they're accepting of the idea of aliens. They said that they will be quite happy to bless an alien in the name of Jesus Christ. I don't know how the alien would feel about that, but, you know, can you imagine flying 50 billion light years to come and land, and there's the Pope and he's going to bless you? I'll say, no, thanks. I've heard about you lot. Right. Now this is a strange one, a rock supposedly rolling out of a crater. I don't know how they know it's rolling out of a crater, but this is done from an earlier lunar reconnaissance type of craft flying over the moon, and you can actually see the trails that it's made in the lunar dust as this rock has rolled from this point here. This supposedly dark area would perhaps be the crater. I just wonder if that's the actual force of it. So it's rolled down the crater and up again and come to rest there. There's actually a later photo that shows a second rock. All these other rocks seem to have stayed put, but these larger rocks have rolled there. Someone suggested it was a lunar quake. I didn't think the moon got quakes somehow, because I always thought earthquakes were to do with the tectonic plates shifting and moving about and rubbing against each other. Now, to my knowledge, there's no tectonic plates on the moon, so I wonder if it's a moonquake, what is causing the moon to shake like that? Is it maybe something to do with the Earth or something? I don't know. But it's interesting that these rocks are supposedly rolling about on the moon. There's a close-up of the track it's left there, so you can almost work out the shape of the actual rock looking based upon the tracks. And I presume that might be the rock up here as it came to rest, the top part of it at least. So yeah, I'm not saying that's aliens, I'm just saying that's an interesting feature that perhaps you haven't seen before. Now this is a guy that's, again this is going to be science, I'll have to narrate my way through it. This is a guy that films anomalies in space, and he's on YouTube, Crow 777 if memory serves me correctly. And he's basically lined up his telescope with a camera on the end of it, and he's filming anomalies. Now, I know you can't see it very well there, but you will see it in a minute. He's actually tracking this. You can see this red circle. There's a tiny, tiny dot that he's filmed going in front of the moon. That's not to say it's in orbit around the moon. I think, my personal thing is that the moon is providing just a white backdrop so that it shows up. Because these things could be going through the night sky and you won't see it. It's only because the moon's there that it happens to pass in front of us. That could be anywhere between just above high Earth orbit right back to the moon. Okay, so he's tracking it down there. He's going all the way down to here. And in a second we're going to see it a lot closer up. And he also does shots of it speeding up. In a second. Right. Now it's moving quicker there. You can see the red circle coming down. Again, you can't really see it from that distance. I appreciate that. But we're going to get a close up in a second of it. This guy's filmed all sorts of things, spaceships firing their rockets and all sorts of weird stuff. Now you can see a black dot moving in front of the moon. Because it's black, and if you saw it against outer space you would never see it. It's only the moon that's making it visible. Now he postulates that the idea that this thing, as it gets closer to this part of the moon, it wobbles a bit, so he thinks. Anyway, now what it is we don't know. It could be just an asteroid in space, maybe, or it could be maybe Earth space junk, you know, from space shuttles or anything like that, or the space station, or you know, it could be an alien. There's hundreds of possible reasons of what it could be. So we're not to just suddenly say, oh my God, it's aliens. We just have to say there's an object and it's of interest. At the moment, it's inconclusive, I would say. But it's an interesting thing to see that going in front of the moon. And as I say, he's zooming in on it. But once you get past that section, then you end up in the blacker space. You lose track of it. And that could be happening all over the night sky, and we just can't see it because it's black. It's only because the moon's, there it is there, forming a nice backdrop to see it on. I suspect it's probably much more closer to the Earth.
Is there a smaller one behind that?
I haven't looked. There could be. There could be. It could be a dot on my screen. Knowing me, I don't wipe my screen very often. Okay. So that's if you want to check him out. Crow 777. Okay. I think he also covers lunar waves, or I might be thinking of another chap. Now, the other thing to bear in mind, this is worth bearing in mind, these videos, you saw that it had quite good graphics there on the end picture with his stuff, name and that. It's quite conceivable, and a skeptic was like to say this, he's very good at video graphics. What's to rule out the thing that he could create that little UFO himself in his same graphics program, tumbling across the moon, to get a lot of hits on YouTube? So you have to sort of think of it from that point of view. Don't just say, oh my God, it's aliens on the moon. You know, you have to try and look at it maybe a little bit, you know, let's get past that. That's it, aliens on the moon. Now, again, this is silent, but I'll try and talk you through some of it. This is a TV show that went out on one of these, I think it's a sci-fi channel. I'm intrigued to know why they're putting it out on mainstream TV. Again, is this a drip, drip, drip thing that we're being fed to sort of give us ideas of aliens and things like that? Now, this is Buzz Aldrin, and he's talking about, unfortunately, I don't know why the sound's not working, it's really annoying me. I think it's something to do with the projector. When you connect a projector up to a laptop, sometimes it just takes the sound away. I'm just going to see if I can figure that out for a second. Let's just see if I can. Bear with me a second.
It might be on the menu where you make
Yeah,
changes
speaker
to
set up. Stereo. Have you just done something on the menu then?
I'll
Okay. Let's try it then. Anything? No? I played it earlier but clicked funny enough.
try this.
Oh.
That's got HDMI.
Doesn't matter if you can't get it, I'll just talk through it.
I'll bring it back to the. I'll bring it back to the. See, it's on HDMI, but I don't know why it's not giving me the sound.
Okay. Right, thanks, Dave. This is a guy talking about various things they've seen on the moon, like radar dishes. What else have we got here? This is a computer regeneration of things that they supposedly looked at the moon, and it looks like old ruins, based from photographs they've taken. I wouldn't trust this particular piece. This is supposedly an alien that they've recovered from an Apollo mission of this lady that's a corpse now, and she's an alien. I wouldn't trust that myself. It could be other footage that's being incorporated into this video. But you can see there, these are various photos that they've got at NASA, supposedly of possible bases on the moon. See there is there. What is that? A radar dish. There's the tumbling rock we saw earlier on. And these are other lunar photographs of various things. And you go right in, and there's what on earth are they, for instance. So yeah, normally you'd hear the sound on this, and they'd talk you through it. So and again, these are the lights I spoke about earlier. Now that's something you can find out on YouTube. It's called Aliens on the Moon, and it's worth a watch. I'll just go past that bit. And this is another one, alien base on the moon, question mark. Now, anyone remember Space 1999, Saturday mornings? Well, that's Moonbase Alpha. So, that is definitely not a real alien base. But someone has just put that at the beginning of this clip. This is a guy that's got a YouTube account called John Leonard Wilson. Now, he's looking through, he's an 8-inch telescope. When I mean 8-inch, it's not 8 inches long, it's actually 8 inches the width of the lens across. Okay, so we know it's a big, powerful telescope. And you saw the clips there, the alien bases on the moon that they had. Well, this guy's captured something very similar. Now, at first glance, it just looks like wibbly-wobbly atmospherics. But look at this stuff over here. They look like structures or possible ruins. I feel like I'm doing the weather. But some of those things there possibly resembled what we saw in independent programs. Some of these here could be structures, or they could just be lens distortions on the moon itself. The wibbly-wobbly effect, by the way, is our atmosphere as it rises through the night sky and causes that distortion effect. Okay, these could be structures. I mean, obviously, if you're flying over there with a spaceship, you'll be able to see these a lot clearer. But he's also got a very powerful telescope to see this. Thank you. You know, maybe he's faked it again. We just don't know. But it looks pretty genuine to me. So. Yeah, he seems to be getting some interesting footage there. I did hear this thing, and I don't know how true this is, but I heard that certain astronomical places, like, you know, with telescopes that look at the night sky, that they've been banned from looking at the moon. I don't know how true that is. I thought, well, why would you ban, you know, astronomers from looking at the moon? What's going on there? I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one.
How could you?
Well, how could you indeed? They might have. There might be something pretty mundane about it that just says, well, you can't look at the moon because this telescope time is rented out to Joe Blogg's society that needs to look at far-off galaxies, and you know that's why you can't look at the moon tonight because we need it to look at the far-off galaxy. It could be something more political like that. Okay, this guy here is a chap called Ingo Swamp. Now, I know you did remote viewing with Tony Topping. So you got an idea, most of you, about
mentioned
what
him.
remote viewing is. This guy was employed by various agencies in the United States in the 1970s because apparently he had really top remote viewing skills. And he was one of the best. There was a few other people, but he ranked as one of the top ones. Now he was tasked with a lot of times of looking at Russian bases, submarines, nuclear establishments, remote viewing them and writing it down or reporting to superiors what they were. And then another time he said, look, I'm really bored doing this. Can we just try something else for fun? You know, just do something. He said, well, what do you propose? He said, well, I don't know, what about if I try and remote view Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, which is the largest planet in our solar system. So he wrote a book of his experiences called Penetration. And it's what the things he saw remote viewing. But he just didn't remote view Jupiter. He did remote view the moon. But I'll get into that in a second. So this is Jupiter. It's the great big red spot there. These things in front of it are some of the moons. I think Jupiter's got, in the region, it's like 60-something moons. Now, we had an idea of how big it was and what it was composed of, but we didn't really know too much about it until we sent the Voyager probes of the 1970s to go to the outer planets. So there's Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, and they went to Jupiter and Saturn and I think Neptune. And he actually remote viewed Jupiter before these probes got there. And in one session he made reports of the physical structures of Jupiter, or the physical features, such as its surface, its atmosphere and weather conditions. And he made statements that, you know, sounded a bit odd at the time, but he said, well, Jupiter's actually got planetary rings like Saturn. Now Saturn is the ring planet, we all know that one. But he was saying that Jupiter has it, but you can't see it from Earth. So this was like a year and a half before the space probes got there. So when they wrote down he's reported rings around Jupiter, it came as a great surprise that when Jupiter was reached by these Voyager space probes, that hey presto, they did have these rings, but they can only be seen up close. You can't see them from Earth, you see. So what's he say? He said, yeah, he's talking about these crystals which form these rings, and he said that maybe they'll reflect radio probes, and he thinks they're made of crystals, and they could be something to do with radio waves, he thought. That's kind of a bit difficult to understand, but basically he was confirming, or he believed that there was rings going around Jupiter. So that's the space probe, that's what it's like. So it's going around Jupiter, and it's only when it's at that height above the planet can it detect these rings and photograph them. And as I say, it can't be seen from Earth at all. Now, the latter part of this story with Ingo Swann is that because he had remote viewed Jupiter and saw rings around it and gave a highly accurate description of it, he was contacted mysteriously by this man called Mr. Axelrod, a bit of a strange name, but he said, I'm Mr. Axelrod, that's all you need to know, but he said, I've got a job for you and I'm going to pay you $10,000 a day, cash, no questions asked, you know, no inland revenue or IRS to know about it. I want you to do a job for me, I want you to remote some coordinates. So he gave him some coordinates of the moon. He had to be taken cloak and dagger style to a secret location. He didn't know where he was blindfolded by these two people, taken to a secret location, and he says, here's your $10,000 a day, spend a week with me, we're going to give you coordinates and I want you to remote view the moon on these coordinates. So he did go there, he remote viewed the moon, and he said, unknown to Swann, the targeted moon coordinates at about 10 different locations were bringing him mind to mind with what he soon realised was an unearthly extraterrestrial presence. He basically described, when he did his remote viewing, he saw humanoids on the moon, and he said they were naked. Naked humanoids, not humans, humanoids. Like they had 2 feet, arms and legs, and that's probably as close as they were to us, but they were naked on the moon. It sounds very, very bizarre. He said they seem to be working on the moon, they seem to be mining on the moon, doing mine sort of work. So are these real beings that seem to be impervious to the fact there's a vacuum on the moon and you can't breathe? So maybe they've got some special, I mean, he might have said they look naked, but they might be in special suits or something to help them breathe. I don't know, but to him they appeared naked. And he said they seem to be aware that I can see them. And he said, this Mr. Axelrod said, you've got to get out of there. Get out of there now. Don't let them find you. So he came back to Earth, or his own mind if you like, and it was basically a bizarre thing. Once he paid his cash, he said, right, that's it, you can go, I don't need you anymore. And he thought, he was told not to tell anyone for like 20 years or something. So he wrote this book about it, Penetration, and he thought, what on earth was all that about? Why did I see these beings on the moon and they appear to be mining ore or something off of the moon's surface? And he came to a kind of conclusion. He thought, well, in today's world we have like people hacking into computers, for instance. Gary McKinnon? Yeah, who hacked into the NASA computer and discovered UFOs. Now he was in the UK hacking a computer system in the United States. Now, sometimes these computer hackers are so clever that when they finally are discovered, they're employed by the company because they say, look, you're so clever, we want you to help us, we want you to basically keep breaking into our defences until we've made it so impenetrable that you can't get in. And it's only with people with your skills that can get into our systems. So we want you to work with us. We won't put you in prison, we won't find you, we'll actually pay you to be a contractor that tries to get into our systems, break into our safe or something. And Ingo Swann thought that maybe this Mr. Axelrod could have been an extraterrestrial who was aware of Earth's progress, if you like, and he was also aware of Earth's investigations into ESP, extrasensory perception. And so he postulated the idea that maybe this Mr. Axelrod was testing out the moon's defences because he thought if humans have developed ESP to a certain extent now that they can do remote viewing, what's them to stop getting to the moon then? Curiosity, just like he went to Jupiter. So he wanted Ingo Swann to go to the moon remote viewing to see if it was possible, and he did it. And that's why he said, now get out. It's like he knew they were going to be there. So he wanted to test out his own alien, if you like, backgrounds, defence systems on the moon. And, maybe it means that then the aliens have to either move shop or protect their planet in some way, protect their moon in some way, their moon, so I say that, from Earth's intrusion. So it's an interesting thing. Now, another book on the moon, this is available on the internet. If anyone wants to read it, you can download it as a PDF form. You can buy old copies of it on Amazon. It's an interesting book, but the problem is many of the photographs that they print in the book are very, very hard to see what they're talking about. Okay, but it's called Somebody Else is on the Moon by George Leonard, made in 1977, and he went through loads of NASA photographs and believes that he found structures on the moon, and he wrote about it, and he actually did little drawings. But when you look at the photographs, it's so hard to discern what's going on that it can't be, well, that's not convincing me at all. This is such a badly photocopied drawing. They were told to go into NASA, look through their files, but they weren't allowed to take any pictures out with them. They just had to make notes of them. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Now this is someone else that's done a look of the moon. This is supposedly original footage. And he claims it's a fleet of UFOs leaving the moon. So let's see if it is, shall we? Let's just watch. There he is, focusing with his camera, zooming in on the moon. He's just lining it up out of curiosity. Let's look at the moon tonight, he thinks. And he goes right in close and then comes back out. He's going to go in and refocus again. Back down he goes. And refocus it. And then look, just as, oh look. Loads of flying saucers, all leaving the moon all at once. They've all been discovered by Ingo Swann. Now, that's a bit strange, isn't it? He just happens to film a load of UFOs at that point as he zoomed in. What's the chances of that? Now, do you notice the moon is moving down there as it's being filmed? That's because the Earth is moving and rotating. So the moon, when you look through a telescope, actually moves down or up because the Earth is rotating. Now, as he's got this fleet of UFOs leaving the moon, look at the size of them. Look at the size of them. And the distance, they're all coming from, they seem to be coming from a similar area, but the actual distance of where they're coming from will actually be thousands of miles apart from each other.
They're not like the red arrows in formation, are they?
No smoke. No smoke. Definitely not. So look, here we go again. They're different locations from them, all leaving, and they're all super huge. If that was actually lifting off the surface of the moon at that size, these would be super huge. Now, you can get super huge UFOs, I presume, but it's just a bit of a coincidence that all these UFOs are leaving the moon at the same time when they happen to be focusing this camera and happen to be filming. The fact is that this guy can now split these colours up and look at the moon from different angles. We know he's clever with the computer, and I postulate that's probably done in a program called After Effects or something similar. After Effects is an Adobe program like Photoshop for video, and so you can do clever things like that. So again, if you found something like that on YouTube, be wary, because it could be a complete fake, okay? Let's get to the next one. Will it go to the next one? Press the button harder. There we go. Now here we go. This is a possible alien base taken by Apollo 11 in July 1969. That's what it said on the website when I visited it. I thought, oh my God, look at that. Look at this here. Interesting alien artefacts.
It looks like a face.
Yeah, it could be, couldn't it? Could it really be alien bases? Let's have a look, see if there's any more. Close-up of a dish. We saw that in our Aliens on the Moon documentary earlier on. Can you see that there? Sky TV on the moon. It looks like it's made out of moon material. Now again, that could be photoshopped in, okay? So just because you see something that looks like a radar dish there, with the advent of photography and Photoshop, it's easy now to make these things on a computer, okay? Now, to search for signs of extraterrestrial life, so says Paul Davis, who's a scientist. He suggests focusing our attention on images of captured lunar reconnaissance orbiter. That's the probe we saw that went around the moon earlier, and also mapped the moon, which made that big moon model earlier. So it says, according to the Guardian newspaper, NASA has made more than 340,000 lunar reconnaissance orbiter images public, but that figure is expected to reach 1 million by the time the orbiting probe has mapped the whole surface of the moon. The scientists explain from these numbers it is obvious that a manual search by a small team is hopeless, and that's why he suggests calling on amateur scientists, that's people that are interested in it, to assist with the process of scanning the images for potential alien artefacts. Now this guy appears on the BBC, he's written books, he's a respected physicist and astronomer, and yet he's talking about scanning images for potential alien artefacts. Now that's interesting why a guy like that, mainstream, should be telling us something like that. That's quite an interesting statement to make. Now, this is one of the images, but we believe they could have been blurred out. Look at this here. All that is all blurry. There's something there at the edge, but the rest is blurry. So what is that, for instance? Why have they had to blur that out? Another interesting question is the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, or one of these. They have various probes that go to them and taking photographs of it. Some of it is funded by the military, not just NASA. Why is the military interested in the moon? What's the purpose of it, you know? Why are the military interested in the moon? The natural structure on the moon, this thing here, what's that? With a big square thing. That looks like an early digital watch to me.
Leather box.
Yeah. So, bizarre stuff there. And this is an excavated crater in the larger crater of Flamsteed P. Now, this person here is saying that this has been excavated and the earth piled up, rather like when you go to a quarry, they pile the surface of soil either side so they can get deeper down. Here, because that's been piled that way and that's been piled that way. So in fact, there's a cross. You can't quite see it there, but there's a cross, and that's been piled there. So it looks like a crater, but in fact, they think that earth has been pushed out. Could it be those naked human beings, or humanoids, the ones seen by Ingo Swann, were responsible for those particular craters? Now here's one here. There appears to be a sphere in the crater here. What's that about? Is it something to do with an electrical discharge? Apparently when you have an electrical universe, as postulated by some people, when craters are created by electrical strikes, they can create spheres in the middle. I don't know the science of it too much, but I've heard reports of that. And this person here again thinks that this could be excavated earth piled up on the left-hand side of the crater. That's what he suggested, that the earth is piled there, and that was the first pile there. That pile's there, put there, and then that earth is then piled on top of that one. So again, that's not a natural formation if it is the case of that one. Lunar waves on the moon. Okay. This is Crow 777 again, which is the guy that talked about the object falling in front of the moon earlier on. Again, look at the graphics there. That's quite clever. That's probably done in After Effects. So they're quite good at their effects, you see. So you're thinking, okay, should I believe everything you're showing me? Because this is all very graphical, cartoony looking. So he's going to be talking about a project he's got going, which he believes is waves oscillating over the moon. And he believes that other people have also filmed this, so he claims. You can see there, look to the edge, sometimes you see it clear on the edge, you see this wave going down the moon. You see a bit go down there, you might see it again in a second. Sometimes you see this ripples over the moon. He seems to think they happen sometimes on, there it goes there, yeah, see that the wave going down there? Not a camera artefact, he's saying, it's something to do, he says it mostly happens at equinoxes. I haven't tested it out myself, I can't say for sure, but this is what he claimed. I'm sure if there's sceptics out there that look at this, they would say, oh no, it's rubbish, whatever. In fact, one sceptic said it's easy to reproduce what he's doing, and he actually gave instructions on how to do it. He actually said if you put footage of the moon into any video editing program, I use a program called Adobe Premiere, he says you can copy what he's doing. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go. How much can we do over time? That's really there. So I said, all right, well, let's have a look. So this is my experiment of Neil's lunar wave in Adobe Premiere, if it plays. Will it play? Please play. If not, I'll have to skip it. I hadn't attempted it, but I don't think it's going to play. Let me go back. I'll try again. No, it's not going to work. I was trying to emulate it, and I got something that looked very much like his lunar waves on the thing. Right. Okay, this is a jet of air. Well, a jet of air, I shouldn't say that actually. A jet streaming out of this crater. They call it the King's Crater, taken by Apollo 16, it's alleged. So this is something, presumably lunar soil. They call it regolith. It's been ejected out of this crater. Like squirting out there. What's all that about? You know, are they having a spring clean maybe? What's causing that? Some sort of pressure to blow it out? Now this is interesting. I actually got this, as I mentioned, the Apollo detectives. So I'm still suspicious of many of the pictures that Apollo bring back. I wonder actually if the Apollo thing was completely fake myself, and I've been in discussion with it. So many of you might be familiar with this picture here. This is from Apollo 17, which is the last mission to the moon in 1972. It's quite a well-known picture, and it's a very, very well structured or composed picture. Look at the way the moon lines up perfectly with the edge of the flag, and you've got the astronaut here. Okay, they may have cropped it to make it look pretty, but it all lines up really nicely. Now that's a great shot, isn't it? It's fantastic. So let's just take a closer look at it. But there's a guy in Canada called Scott Henderson who's looked at all these photographs really, really close up. Now, if we look at the flag here, that's the same flag. There's the creases. If you look zoomed in, you probably have to come up to the screen, to be fair. These darker patches here, what are they? He thinks that is a wet flag. You can't get a wet flag on the moon. What's causing that dampness? You know, why would you have a wet flag? He wonders if it's an Apollo moon set and it's rained and it's drying out in the sun. Now, you see, if anyone's hung like a t-shirt or whatever on the line, you see it drying, don't you? You see the wet drying away from it. So that is where, to me, it's dry. This here, you can see that's not a straight line, it's curving away. It's where the wet, you see that darker area? The wet of the flag is drying away in the sun. I tried showing my brother it on the phone, but when you look at the phone, you can't really tell. But when it's blown up, you really look at it, oh my God, that's pretty amazing. He also, he's discovered potentially cars on the moon. Now this sounds like the Sunday Sport, doesn't it? Potentially cars on the moon. But this is a photograph, a NASA photograph that you can get off their website. There's a lump here in this crater, and you're thinking, what's that? So he zooms in, and this is what he's found. And he said, look, that's got a wheel there. That's got a bonnet. He thinks it's actually possibly this classic car from the 1960s, which is he thinks that's the bonnet that's opened up. Now, some skeptics said, oh yeah, but why are they dumping classic cars onto an Apollo moon set? They're worth millions of pounds, these classic cars these days. He said, yeah, they might be worth millions of pounds now, these classic cars, but they weren't classic cars back then in the 60s, were they? They were standard cars. And so this is what he thinks they are. He thinks they're automated bits. And what he says they've done to make their Apollo moon set, they've gone around with that kind of stuff you spray on sets. You know, like when cavity wall filling, that sort of material or something similar. And they just go, oh, there's a car, let's spray over that, and it covers it to the point where it looks like a moon rock from a distance. But it still retains the shape of a car. It's easier to spray over it rather than tow it away or something.
Couldn't get the 88.
No, that's right. Now, they did, for instance, make large models of the moon's surface here. Now, this is pre-NASA, I have to say. This is not NASA. This was for an exhibition about the moon done in the 1930s, similar to what the exhibition I saw recently with the inflated moon. But, you know, in a sense, you could have a model moon and run a tiny camera over that and simulate flying over the moon. That's not impossible. And here's a man again from the 1930s over a large model of the moon, recreating structures on the moon. Now you can see there, that's where the moon is joined up in panels, but that could easily be filled in later on to cover it. But that's just an example, again, that you can get some quite realistic moon things. Now, I would try and play this. I think what it's time now, we could probably have a break now, and we can resume afterwards when I can try and figure out the sound on this perhaps during the break. So if you want to have a coffee or stretch your legs or whatever, thank you for the moment.
Fed water will begin the second half. So once again,
Thank you very much. Okay. We've just been having a few issues with the sound, so unfortunately I can't play you the full clips as I normally present them. So I'm going to have to do the voices of these people. So
Where's the coming first?
possibly. I think you'll be more convinced then. Anyway, does anyone remember the Disclosure Project? Has anyone seen videos of it at all? Anyone want me to explain it if you don't know about it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll explain it. Basically, in about 2001, there was Dr. Stephen Greer. He's a regular GP in America. I think he was an emergency doctor, actually, working in one of the hospitals in Virginia, in the United States. But he had a keen interest in UFOs, and over the years, he managed to amass a number of witnesses together to agree to go on to what they call the press club in Washington, D.C., which is where they have press conferences. And I guess I'm only assuming this. I guess you can rent out a room in the press club rather like you can rent a community hall here for a presentation. And he rented out the press club, invited all the press to come along, and he got various witnesses from the military, from the defence contractors, scientists, and ordinary witnesses to come along and give their testimonies about what they know about UFOs and things. And he had many, many different people talking about UFOs and over nuclear weapons sites, UFOs caught on gun cameras on aeroplanes flying over great heights and things like that. Even Rendlesham Forest was discussed. Now there's one chap he brought on called Sergeant Carl Wolfe, who was in the US Air Force, and he worked, I think it was at Langley Air Force Base, where he was a technician. And there is a clip here which I will play, but I don't think the audio will come through. He says, pressing the button. Yeah, this is it. It'll probably play, but you won't hear him. But he's actually talking about his presentation there. And he was saying that in the mid-60s he was working as a technician, and he was called to go into a particular room where it was the NSA. He thought that was NASA. But in fact, the NSA is the National Security Agency. And he was called to go and repair a machine that had broken down. It was causing a bottleneck in the processing of all their lunar photographs they were getting back from probes around the moon. And whilst he was working there, and he said, I'm going to have to take this machine out because I can't see it under this dark light, he said that whilst he was waiting for some men to come and wheel this large machine away, he got talking to another technician there. He didn't know him very well, but he got talking to him. And he started to explain how all these moon pictures are transmitted from the space probe, going around the moon back down to Earth, and he's landed with that. And whilst he's chatting to him, he says, oh, by the way, we've discovered a base on the moon. He's going, what? He said, you know, he said as soon as that guy had mentioned it, he says he knew he had broken security, basically. He shouldn't have said that to him. You know, it's a need-to-know basis. So he got quite nervous about it, but it's also quite excited to see these pictures, and he described them as dome-like structures, mushroom-like structures as well, things that look possibly like radar dishes, if I recollect what he's saying. But you can find this clip on YouTube if you're interested to hear in his words. He talks about you know, what I'm saying about these structures on the moon. He said that when he got home, go on to YouTube, that's what I meant to say. He says that when he got home, he thought he might see an announcement on the 6 o'clock news. Imagine that, they're going to talk about it on the 6 o'clock news. He says, here I am, 30 years later, and they still haven't announced it, and everyone in the audience chuckled, but of course he was thinking so naively then, as a young airman at the time. In fact, he died last year in an accident. It's not suspicious, I think he just died in an accident. Otherwise, if they were trying to bump him off, they would have bumped him off years ago, wouldn't they, really? But, yeah, in fact, when it was announced that he had died, it had, man who said there was a base on the moon has died, and it was in the newspaper. So again, they're presenting things in the newspaper now. They're telling you about things, you know, they're putting the idea in your head that there's a possible base on the moon. So it gets you thinking. They're opening up the shackles a little bit to this alien or extraterrestrial or UFO phenomenon. So there he was, and he announced that, and this was a great success. This thing was televised over the internet, lots of people saw it, and then 2 months later it was 9/11, and unfortunately it got completely buried and forgotten about in what then ensued with the whole of 9/11 scenario, and that's a whole different story in itself. But it's worth watching this. You know, this guy is given a testimony. He swears under oath, basically, that he saw photographs of an alien base on the moon. Now, maybe it was genuine. Maybe he saw real photographs, or maybe he was led there to say, please can you come and fix this machine, and then they've set him up to see pictures. You know, that they're feeding him information, knowing that he'll blow the whistle later on. You know, so many arguments can be put forward about how you don't just take it, that's the basic story. You've got to maybe think about it from other angles. Was he set up to be fed this information, knowing that he'd be talking about it at some point? Now, this is, you know, it says here, significantly, whistleblowers have come forward to claim that NASA and affiliated government agencies have a policy of destroying or altering photos that reveal artificial structures on the moon or in space. Carl Wolf, the man we just seen, for example, claims that he witnessed NASA, the NSA, that's the National Security Agency, and the US Air Force cooperating to remove such structures from Apollo and satellite imagery when detected. And the Washington Times had this to say of Wolf's whistleblower testimony. I think it's a dumb statement, actually. It says, this is their quote. It says, likewise, Carl Wolf claims that he was actually told about a base on the dark side of the moon by a NASA official was never proved. It's only hearsay. Surely, this person is saying, Gabriel Pickard, surely if someone at NASA had seriously breached national security by making such a claim, they would have been prosecuted. Now, I think it's a bit of a dumb statement, because if they've been prosecuted, surely that means it's opening up the fact that they've got something to hide. I think it's let sleeping dogs lie. It's a policy they would probably follow. You know, it's like all those people that made those statements at the National Press Club about UFOs. To my knowledge, at least, they haven't been prosecuted for saying what they've said, and yet they're still either employed by the military or former military employees. So if they're suddenly starting to get prosecuted, that would be NASA and whoever admitting that all this was possibly true. So if they just let it lie, they're just think, ignore it, go away. And it did. 9/11 happened. But, you know, those in the UFO still interested, and they still follow Dr. Stephen Greer and his witnesses. Now, another guy that's come forward is a guy that actually worked on the Apollo program. He was responsible for looking at pictures. He was Dr. Ken Johnston. I might skip past this part because you won't be able to hear what he's talking about because of the speaker problem. But basically, he was asked to destroy photos showing structures on the moon, and he refused, and he actually kept them back, supposedly. Let's see if we can see something on this. You might see a few images on this. Give it a start to warm up. Is it going to play? It's a bit intermittent today, this thing. Some of the clips are playing. I think we'll have to check this out later on. That's not working. Right. Okay, now other people have come forward. Again, you find these things on YouTube, and this is supposedly Apollo 15, astronaut climbing down the ladder, and he sees a UFO on the moon. So we'll watch this clip and see if you agree, is it a UFO, okay? So this is from an onboard, I think it could be a camera being held by the other astronaut, because it's slight movement. It's like, obviously on its side there, and they're going to turn it around in a second. And as they whip it around, you supposedly see this possible UFO. I think it might be the actual astronaut doing the camera himself. There it goes. Right. These NASA astronauts are terrible camera people. And yet they produce excellent photographs on the Hasselblad cameras that come back from the moon. You ever noticed that?
They must have had to take their gloves off though.
Yeah.
Well, of course. Right, you're going to see something in a second. I do have some stills of this, so if you miss it, you'll see what I'm going to show in this clip.
This is making the assumption that they have been to the moon.
Of course, this is making the assumption they have been to the moon. So there is an astronaut there. And he's filming on the set, sorry, on the moon. And normally you'd hear on this a lot of the NASA Roger bleeps and talking back to mission control and stuff like that. Now they're panning around there, a lot of interference. You'll see something in a second. I think they could be adjusting what they call the aperture on the camera, so it's a correctly exposed level. There's something. Oh, do you see that? Yeah, don't worry, you'll see it again. There it is again. Oh, what's that?
Is that a few Carlsberg?
Someone offset, isn't it?
There it is, look. What's that? See, is that a UFO resting on the hill? So, oh, there's something else that he's dropped there, look. And these NASA people are litterbugs, aren't they? You know, some of the stuff they throw off their ships, you know. I mean, if the clanger saw them, they'd have a right field day with them. But anyway, that's that. So now, this is what they were looking at, or what they captured. Now, it does look like a craft landed, I must admit, when you go, oh my God. But it's also been put forward that, in fact, that this is actually just the edge of another hill in front of this hill. And so, because it's brightly illuminated by the sun or the large light at the studio, wherever they may be, you get a bit of what they call edging, which appears when you get wide contrasted images. It's an artifact of the camera, this black part. Sometimes you can see it when you film people, particularly on older cameras, and they're on against a bright background, you sometimes get a black edge go around them. You can see it on video. So I suspect that that's what it is, but a lot of people mistaken that for a UFO landing. So again, this is stuff you've got to be wary of that goes around the internet of these wild claims. But the trouble is, it all gets muddled up. So you hear UFOs and then you get Carl Wolf and you think, what are you to make of it?
I have heard one of the astronauts, I don't know which one it was, saying that when they got there they were waiting for it.
That's Neil Armstrong. Yeah, that is a claim that I will address. I'll say it now, as you brought it up. What it was, he was at a conference somewhere in the 1970s, I think, somewhere in Italy, I think it was. There's the author Timothy Good, who's a UFO author. It was reported back to him. A friend of his, who's now died, he said that she was actually an agent, espionage agent or something, and I don't know what nationality she was, but she was supposedly at this conference where she overheard Neil Armstrong say to another gentleman at the conference, saying, yes, they were waiting for us. There was 3 UFOs lined up on the edge of a crater, and they were huge. And they obviously didn't want us there, so we just had a few scoops of soil and off we went. Now, you think, oh my God, that sounds fantastic. But I think there's a few things wrong with that, because if that was the case, if there was UFOs on the moon and they're being warned off it, why did they go back for those other missions? And on the last mission, they were there for 3 days. See, that doesn't kind of tie up with the warning, stay away from the moon. They spent billions of dollars getting back there. And the other thing is that, because I personally believe it was partly faked or maybe wholly faked, that I think there's a counter-espionage movement going around spreading rumours to support the claim they went to the moon.
It reinforces the fact.
Yes, red herrings, okay? I mean, for instance, it worked in wartime. What they do, for instance, in Vietnam, the Americans parachuted or dropped loads of condoms over North Vietnam. And they were super huge condoms, made in the USA, as a psychological weapon to give the impression that the American soldiers are well hung. And obviously, when these little North Koreans are going to fight these blokes who are well hung, it puts the fear of God into them that these are big, you know, whatever. So it's a psychological thing, you know, and just by dropping these condoms into the North Vietnamese forests and things like that, it kind of maybe, hopefully had some sort of effect on, or that's what the Americans thought. Reduce the population in. So my thinking is that that lady was an agent, and she was maybe working with NASA or the NSA or someone there to maybe, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, it's not been announced this, it wouldn't surprise me that people like Neil Armstrong and all the other astronauts, maybe when they go into real large public events, are accompanied by handlers in some secret capacity. They may be their book publishing assistant to the public. Oh yeah, I'm Buzz Aldrin's publicity assistant, but they're also there to they have a dual role. They're handling them, possibly. So, for instance, they might help Neil Armstrong spread these rumours about aliens on the moon, or I saw UFOs and things like that, because then it backs up the claim they went to the moon. Because people say, hey, guess what, you saw UFOs, it must be, they must have gone to the moon. Likewise, the claim, I think it was Apollo 10, going around the backside of the moon, supposedly, when they said they heard music in the capsule. Did anyone hear about that one? They heard this mysterious music.
Yeah.
We never actually got the CD out. It came out as 20 greatest Apollo hits or something. But yeah, they supposedly heard this weird music. It wasn't coming through the radio, they could just hear it. And this was put about as a mysterious paranormal claim that they're trying to keep under wraps, but the word got out, you see. So that again, you believe, well, they're trying to keep it under wraps, so they must have gone around the moon. You don't actually sort of think they must have gone around, you just accept it, you see. It's slipped in there as a psychological thing. And so as well as the hardware, the fake photography, they have to psychologically sell you the story. Has anyone seen Richard D. Hall's Analysing the Astronauts? Yeah? Yeah. Okay, for those that haven't seen it, it's worth going onto YouTube. If you're interested in whether Apollo was faked or not, if they went to the moon, type in Richard D. Hall or Rich Planet Analysing the Astronauts. And there's a chap called Peter Hyatt, who's worked for the FBI and other security agencies in America, and he does voice statement analysis. And basically, in a nutshell, he will listen to a statement, someone will sit down and they say, okay, tell us where you were, what you did, what you said, what you did, blah, 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 blah. Put them in a relaxed situation, and they'll tell their story. And he can work out, with the analysis of the words they use, whether they're actually telling the truth or not. And so, what Richard D. Hall has done, he gave them a tape, or a DVD, recording of The Sky at Night from 1971 with Patrick Moore interviewing Neil Armstrong. And so this would be about a year after his supposed walk on the moon. And Patrick Moore's asking questions of him. He says, so tell us about when you walked on the moon, what did you see? Did you see stars or planets from the moon? Well, there have been reports of others seeing stars and planets from the moon. I did not see stars or planets from the moon. And he's talking a very mechanical way of talking about it. Once he analysed all this, he came to the conclusion, he said, he hasn't actually put himself on the moon's surface in the statement. He is saying it as if he's reading a script or something. That's the kind of thing he came to. And he came to kind of a shocking conclusion. He said there's 4 possible conclusions. 1, that he's hiding something that he's not allowed to reveal. 2, he talks like this every day. I have been to the pub and I talk to my wife like this. And there's another one where that he didn't go to the moon. And a 4th conclusion that can't be concluded at all. And he's on the fence about it, sort of thing. But then he got his wife, who's also a voice of statement analysis, to analyse the same interview, and she came to the same conclusion. Now these are both Americans who believed in the Apollo moon landings, and they were both shocked when they analysed this 20-minute discussion. They were both really shocked to see what the conclusions they had come to, because they had always believed in the Apollo moon landings, and here they were now having doubts about it based upon their own science that they do as a job every day of voice statement analysis. So it's worth watching. It's free to watch. Just type in Analysing the Astronauts, Rich Planet, and you'll see the whole thing. And I think even on the Rich Planet website you can download a whole kind of PDF file of the whole thing in greater detail. Now I talked about various websites that will show you moon anomalies and things like that, and I talked about bases as well. Here's another one I came across, which is a very ancient artefact on the side of the moon. You're thinking, oh my God, that's fantastic. And people go around and grab screenshots and put it up and says, here's some weird stuff on the moon. So, you know, you look at it, you hold on to it, you present it, And then maybe a year or two later, you come across other information that supersedes it. So, I mean, that looks pretty amazing. There's the surface of the moon. There's some sort of structure there. It's clearly not just normal craters. There's lines and everything there. Looks pretty good, huh? Amazing. So, is that really Apollo? Is that really something from the moon? Well, this Werner von Braun, who designed the NASA space rockets, he was a German, put together this video, and again you can't hear this, so I'm going to have to narrate you through this. I'll try my best German accent, alright? Hello, welcome, we are down on the moon. Now, this is Werner von Braun. He's talking about the NASA space rockets here, and this is made in about 1957-58, so it's a good 12 years or so before the Apollo landed on the moon. So this is their proposal that was prior to a Saturn V space rocket. And so it's looking at a very science fiction-y kind of rocket. You can see that there. And he's saying that what you'll do, you'll go around in Earth orbit, around there, and eventually you'll reach a space station, and you'll dock with the space station, and this will be the little craft that comes off the space station. It's looking very Flash Gordon, you notice that there. There he is. This is a section which is almost like the front of an aircraft, isn't it? It's got a little cockpit, it's like little radar dishes. Now, he talks you through various parts of the section what they can drive off. So this is actually what they believe that will take them to the moon, would you believe? Now this is interesting here. This is what he calls his radiation shield, which will protect the whole craft from radiation as they go through space. But it's interesting the actual final Apollo ship didn't have any kind of protection at all to go through space, through the radiation shields. And in fact, that little red thing at the front of the craft there is a bit like walking into Chernobyl with an umbrella to protect you from radiation. That is how effective it would be. So anyway, this is the special effects clip of their recreation of what a trip to the moon might be like. And they're flying around the moon and they're analysing it with their little scopes and things like that in their spaceship. And the captain says we're going to go into the light side of the moon now, or the Terminator, where it goes from light to dark. And what they're going to do is they're going to fire off flares, which you can see now. And he goes, fire off flare number 1. And they fire off the flare. You'll see the flare go down in a minute. On the actual film, you hear this sound effect, and these are the flares that come out here. But of course, there's no sound in space, so you won't really hear it. So actually, we're watching it more true to scale, aren't we? So here we are, some guy filming it, Buzz Aldrin or someone filming it out the window. And you'll see the flare go down, and it illuminates as it explodes over the moon. Fire the flares. There it goes. There it goes, down to the moon. It's done by Disney, this film. There it is, lights up the moon. So you look at the smoke and it's like got a cartoon look to it because it's animated, you see. See that kind of cartoon? It looks a bit like Snow White or something as they go. A bloody good moon set though, isn't it? Quite a realistic looking moon set. Now, after a few flares, they fire these flares and they illuminate, they start getting high radiation readings on their little scope as they get to a certain section of the dark side of the moon. You'll see this. So we're getting high radiation readouts, he's saying, on our scopes. It's peaking really high, there's something down there. So the captain says, okay, fire another flare, let's see what's down there. Okay? So they're going to fire a flare now. There he is, fire the flare, he's saying. There it goes down there. Bang, it explodes. And look, what's that? That's our alien moon base that we saw earlier on. And these two guys going past in the spaceship, they just look at each other. They don't do anything about it. It's like, oh yeah, we see that every day, you know. But so this is the thing, you've got to be careful when you suddenly see screen grabs or shots of alien bases on the moon, and you think, that's proof. But hang on, that's not proof, because that was a 1958 Disney film. So there it is there, you see. But it's interesting that they would address that idea back in 1957. There's a possibility of alien artefacts on the moon. Why would they suggest that back in 1957? Were they expecting that sort of thing? You know? Very interesting, very interesting. Right. Okay. So, this is again, possibly, it's supposed to be like Chang'e 2, which is an orbiter, the Chinese sort of space program around the moon, taking pictures. And they say, oh, that's an alien base. But I've since found out that's not an alien base, it's some ruin somewhere in like Chile or somewhere like that. And someone's photoshopped it into a lunar environment. But these are much more interesting. These are pictures taken from, I think it might have been a Russian probe going around the moon. And this is called the Shard, which, well, it's nicknamed the Shard, which is actually like a huge, maybe a mile-long tower above the moon. Made of possibly rock or something. That's just a thing they look there for markers to highlight it. It's nothing to do with any spaceship or anything like that. Registration mark. So this is it close up. They think it might be some sort of crystalline structure, but this, you know, this is like, this could be as big as Big Ben, something like that in London. I mean, this is probably zoomed in, so it's quite blurry. And obviously this thing's moving around as it's taking photographs. But why haven't we got clear photographs of this on the moon from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter? You know, we should be seeing that with high resolution digital cameras going around the moon. We should be seeing pictures like this now. And this was done in the 1960s. Okay. Now this is from an Apollo photograph, so I'm very suspicious of this. This was, it gives the photograph there. Hasselblad, which is the photo, the camera that took it, nicknamed the castle. It's actually just not that whole picture, they got it there. That's actually a small section from a much, much larger picture. And it appears as a, imagine if that was the picture, that would be there, up there in the corner of the picture, and they're looking at the moon down here. And it's discovered by Richard Hoagland, who looks at artefacts on Mars and things. And he calls it the castle. So he thinks it was a deliberate thing. They photographed it when they saw it, when they went in orbit, but I'm very dubious about that. So conclusions then, is there an alien base on the moon? Well, more and more people are coming forward with various stories, like we heard about Ingo Swann, who did remote viewing. We heard about Carl Wolf, the guy who gave the testimony to the press club in New York back in the year 2001 for Dr. Stephen Greer. They're the kind of claims I'm much more interested in, rather than these fake videos you see on YouTube. And so if you're going to go investigating these things, I'd actually be more inclined to listen to these people about what they've got to say, rather than just look at UFO stuff that's been splashed together in Photoshop or After Effects or any of these clever special effects programs. And are we really going back to the moon? They're talking about us going back to the moon now in 2020 something, you know. They've been talking about it for many, many years and keep cancelling the project. And I can't see how we're going to go back to the moon. I can't see how they're going to do it, to be honest. I'm going to skip past that because time's running. What time have we got? Probably got another 20 minutes. And this is a guy called Milton Cooper, who is a guy that, he says, this is what you mentioned earlier. According to NASA, astronaut Neil Armstrong said there was aliens on the moon and told us in uncertain terms that we had to stay off the moon. Again, I'm a bit dubious of that statement. Maybe people like who appear to be whistleblowers are in fact not whistleblowers, but they're counter-espionage people telling us things that they want us to hear, you see. So again, we've got Apollo comments here. Again, unconfirmed reports between Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin said they thought they saw a UFO taking off as they were going around the moon or something, or was in orbit with them. So they say these little things because that way you believe that they're actually on their way to the moon. Because yeah, we saw a UFO flying alongside us all the way to the moon. But don't tell anyone. It's that kind of thing that makes you believe. And this is a statement. I don't believe this statement. This is supposedly a quote. These babies, in quotes, are huge, sir, enormous. I can't see Apollo astronauts saying these babies are huge, sir. If you're an Apollo astronaut, you would call it a bogey. I think that's a technical word. They call it for these alien craft or enemy territory craft or something like that. I'm very suspicious of that particular quote, but that's what you find on the internet as supposed claims of them. Now, Google Moon. Has anyone tried using Google Moon and found anything interesting? Lots of people have gone around Google Moon and found things. Now, whether Google put them there for a joke, I don't know. But that was found in a crater on Google Moon. That could have been put there by the people at Google, or it could be something genuine that has been missed by the Lunar Reconnaissance team. They should have airbrushed it out, maybe. I don't know. But what is it? It's an interesting thing. These are further pictures of disc-like structures supposedly found on the moon. Again, these pictures could be fake. Again, they could have been mocked up to give the impression that NASA really went to the moon. So they're releasing alien artifacts on the moon to give the impression that they really went there. But you see those wheel-like structures, they've been drawn there for definition. Someone called them wagon wheels, but they reckon they're a few miles across. Caught in the pictures there, these things. And there we have, I think, I can't actually see it, there it is there, the tiny little structure there. It looks like a crater, but they believe it's some sort of dish or something. Now that's Richard Hoagland there. We talked about him and the Mars artefacts earlier on. He's done a lot of research into Mars artefacts. He's also looked at various things on the moon. Now, this is the kind of pictures he's presented to us in the 1980s or 70s, and they're taken from scans of photographs on what we call flatbed scanners. Think of your scanner that you got at home for your pictures, and you might scan it on your computer, but these were really old technology at the time. And so when he increases the contrast, like you might do on a TV, and brighten the picture, he's come up with these what he calls glass castles or structures on the moon. So you're thinking, oh my God, so here's the surface of the moon, and there's a huge castle there. But as someone pointed out, that well, maybe it isn't. Maybe it could be the fact that you're using this old scanner technology of a photograph, and as it scans there, you're actually seeing the base of the lid of the scanner on top of the photograph. So that's a scan of it. But the guy who was looking at this, who was like taking the mickey, he's found hairs in these pictures, you see. So he said, is that Richard Hoagland's beard hair up there? But Richard Hoagland thinks that, I don't know why he comes to the conclusion they're glass. I don't know why he reaches that conclusion, they're glass structures. I mean, if you're an alien, would you really build a glass structure on the moon? Or something that's made of glass? I mean, you'd be able to see them changing, wouldn't you, when they go to bed at night? You know, that's one thing. One reason why I don't believe that. Anyway, this is a much better way to change. It's in the Tower of Babel on the moon, which was taken by this Soviet probe. So again, if that's true, look at the height of that. That's the curvature of the moon there. That's got to be bloody huge, you know. 3 times the size of maybe our largest tower that we've got, maybe 7 or 8 miles high or something. I don't know. Is that natural, or is it being put there, or is it some sort of explosion that happened on the moon that formed out some sort of lava? Is it an artefact that's left over when the moon was created? It's bizarre, isn't it? Yet we don't see these in normal moon maps in books, and yet there's a structure there that suggests otherwise. But there's only one source that I go to for all my confirmed information, and that's the Sunday Sport, because it's World War II bomber found on the moon, and you know that's the one I have to believe above everything else.
Is that the pilot above?
That's a cross change Neil Armstrong, I think. Yeah. The effects of the radiation, I think. Anyway, so that is the end of the talk. If you want to find out further information, you can look on my YouTube channel, Neil Peel. If you want to listen to the radio podcast we do, there's the Paranormal Peep Show, which I co-host with Andy Chaplin. That's the website. You can find out about it on paukradio.com. I do have a website, neilgeddesward.co.uk, and I also run the High Wycombe Paranormal Meetup group, of which you can find videos of us on the YouTube channel Neil Peel. So I guess there's going to be questions in a minute.
Questions and answers?
Yeah, so thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, Neil, do you think there's a connection between the moon and Saturn, as in the moon-Saturn matrix? David Icke covers that.
I've heard of something called the Ring Makers of Saturn. It was a book that was written some years ago. Is that what you're referring to?
No, David Icke had come up with a theory that the Saturn was sending off vibrations to the moon, which were being relayed back to Earth. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
And who detected it, or what did they do with the vibrations?
It's something that David Icke's come up with. You know, I think it goes back to the Sumerians and stuff. They were the one about the moon.
Well, maybe it's connected with this The Ring Makers of Saturn book, which I know he's referred to.
Yeah.
Which I think is a book, and I can't remember the name of the guy. I think he
Norman. Well, I can't remember.
Yeah.
His name. Old guy.
But I haven't read the book, I have to say, so I'm not too knowledgeable on it. But I understand that he's suggesting that the rings of Saturn are artificial or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know any much more than that. I haven't read the book, so I don't know anything about vibrations, sending signals back to the moon and back to Earth or anything like that. I don't know, so I can't really say with any confidence what I do know about it. All I know is that he suggested that the rings of Saturn, instead of being chunks of ice or rock floating around, they've been artificially put there in some way or form. I don't know if that's true or not, but my thinking of it is that when you've got things of huge planets or anything like that, because their gravitational pull is quite strong. I mean, if anyone remembers Comet Shoemaker-Levy, does anyone remember that at all? back in the mid-90s. This comet was discovered by two scientists, Shoemaker and Levy, spotted this comet. They predicted it was going to hit Jupiter, and it was true. They saw it coming down through Jupiter, and it's actually filmed by all the scientists around the world, and they saw it explode into Jupiter. And even a nun, would you believe it, this mystical, I think she might have been French nun, very old lady, predicted it some years before, and she said a comet will strike the planet Jupiter in the year 1995, I think it was, and I remember that because it was the year my daughter was born, so that's why it sort of sticks in my mind. But she predicted it like in the late 1980s, and there was a video of her saying it, and she said it's a punishment from God for all the pornography we have on planet Earth. I think it stopped it, obviously, so it definitely worked. This comet broke up as it hit Jupiter into about 7 sections because the gravity was so strong. They actually predicted it would break up as it pulled it in. But sometimes when these things break up, they end up forming rings around the planet in orbit, rather like that we have loads of junk up in orbit from our own planetary things that we've sent up. And then eventually they'll form an orbit of stuff going around our planet. I mean, say 300...
an asteroid belt.
We could end up with an artificial asteroid belt or ring around Earth in a few hundred years' time. The amount of spacecraft that are going up there now...
Have we actually been up there? I mean, even high Earth orbit or low Earth orbit?
I think
there's a lot of...
I think the low Earth orbit is more probable because
yes, they don't send anything up past 400 miles.
Yeah, it's the hiding something that they don't want us to see, and possibly that's why it was faked.
Where your flat Earth comes in.
Right. Yes.
Have you heard anything about a guy called Charles Hall, an American?
The tall whites.
Yeah. He also mentioned that he was he took the weather recordings on Area 51, 2, 3 or 4.
It was a desert he worked in, that's where he met the tall whites.
And he said there was alien craft landing there.
Yes, that's it, the tall whites.
He was spouting this off, and then the Americans stopped him from moving out of the country.
Yeah, it was, when I say the tall whites, I'm not talking about large coffees.
No. He called them tall Norwegians, I think.
Yeah, I think like 8 or 9 feet tall, these alien beings, and he called them the tall whites. That was the name he gave them. But he discovered them because he would have to drive out to portions of the desert with weather balloons and measurements and all sorts of things, measuring the weather for their experiments, exploding bombs, aircraft, or whatever they needed, I don't know. And that's where he came across them, and they were allowed to stay there, like you say. And they had their own like mini society. Whether they're still there now or if it actually happened, I don't know. But yeah, I've heard of it. It's interesting.
He said the staff were warned about going anywhere near them because obviously I suppose if their parents whatever, then you likely come across come a bit of a cropper type stuff.
Yeah, because he worked for the military, but he was still quite happy to talk about it, and he wasn't prevented from talking about it, which makes you wonder. Was again, whilst we're listening to stories of the tall whites, which all sound fantastical, is there other stuff? Is that to deflect us from other stuff we should be talking about? Or no, that was it.
Well, his wife was a star turn. Religious wise. You tell him.
She used to wear an enormous crucifix.
Did she?
4 or 5 inches.
Really?
Yeah. And she always introduced him before he went on the stage because Charles was shy and he didn't know how to do things. And after about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, she started to shiver off the stage to let him on. And she said, I have 5 children. I thought, my God, the Virgin Mary writes again.
I never knew that. Oh. I'm surprised that Richard D. Hall was allowed to talk.
Yeah, but he said that the craft went in and out on the faces of the moon, to the moon.
Yeah, I didn't hear that, but that's interesting. Maybe it's some that shields their landing and takeoffs.
I mean, when you think of the German guy, the knowledge he had.
Yeah.
I think when they said the Americans would be to the moon and showed you all this carry on, I think they'd already been.
It's possible, I suppose.
Well, it was just a charade, they'd already been.
Yeah, I mean, what we saw was a very public face of the Apollo missions, and there's supposedly a secret space program. They may have gone there already under aided flights, perhaps, and we're just being shown the Meccano version, if you like, the very simplified version. Dave, you had a question?
Yeah, it's kind of, well, it's kind of related to the moon. What's your view on the whole space station thing?
What, the International Space Station?
Yeah.
I don't really have a view on it. I mean, there's some people that have out there postulate that it doesn't really exist and it's a false thing. I've not seen it personally myself, but my brother has seen it. He's a keen astronomer and he's shown me, I don't know if he's got photographs, but I remember him saying he's seen it through his telescope quickly, or photographed it. And I have seen photographs of it in daylight, which is interesting. So you have a blue sky behind it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they snapped it in daylight, but I know there's these websites that supposedly show you when it's going to fly over at a certain point. And it's just zap and it's gone, because these things are circling the Earth at 90, they go around every 90 minutes or something. So, it's no good just looking at it and it slowly floats into your field. It's gone like that.
I mean, that's in low, what they call LEO,
low Earth orbit, that's right, yeah.
So, but a lot of people believe, they watch the videos where the astronauts, or not astronauts, the crew of this supposedly space station look like they're touched by wires and...
Yeah, I've seen videos also where they're supposedly disappearing out the shots and things like that. Now, I've seen things like that because I've worked in broadcast TV. We've had satellite feeds coming through from some, say, European Cup football thing. And if you notice, these astronauts always disappear at the end of their talk. And I've seen things like that. When the football match has happened on a satellite feed, and I've recorded it, say, what happens, they pull their plug their end and say thank you, because they're booking time on a satellite. So it's costing money. So they disconnect it, they unplug it. They finish with that feed. It appears then that the football players disappear or something, and you're left with a trace of what was there, because it's a static image. So it's hard to explain, but anything moving no longer has to be rendered on the screen. So you're just left with a trace of what was there before, which is the static shot of the background. So it looks like they're disappearing, but yes, they are disappearing, but it's not like a green screen has been switched off or anything like that. I do think they're up there. I do think they're up there.
I think they could have set up a space station in the Vomit Comet, because if you look at the clips, they're all cut into, that was less than 28 seconds, and it'll cut to something else. In 28 seconds is the maximum you can stay in a flotation position.
Yeah.
So they could have built it into the Vomit
Well, I
Comet.
do know that when they made Apollo 13, the Tom Hanks movie, I do know that they built sets inside the Vomit Comet for their zero-G shots. So I can see why you're saying that they'd film a pen floating across and things like that. So you could argue that, although there's other shots where it shows them going through to their canopy where they're looking out on the Earth. Now, maybe that's faked as well, but I just have a feeling that the whole space station is genuine. That's my feeling on it. The thing is that when you start sort of suspecting Apollo was fate, and you sort of say, oh, the Challenger thing, they're still alive, and this is still, that, you start going a whole rocky road of everything's fake. Oh, now the Earth's flat, and you get into real dodgy territory. And oh my God, I've run out of Baker full. I need to put it on my head. You start going really.
But there's perfectly legitimate arguments that the Earth could be flat.
Well, I don't go along with the flat one myself.
Curvature 8 inches to the mile. It's been proven that the Earth doesn't curve 8 inches to the mile.
The measurements may not be totally accurate.
We need accurate measurements.
But I know that when I've talked to people in Australia, it's dark outside their window, and I know that when I've looked through my telescope, all the other planetary bodies in the solar system that I can see through my telescope are spherical. So to me, the logic stands up that we must be on a spherical planet anyway. And when you've seen astronauts inside a capsule and they're blowing water through a bubble, a tube, say a straw, and the water comes out, it instantly forms a sphere. A liquid wobbly sphere, because it's liquid, but it forms a sphere. And so the science that stands to reason that we must be on a sphere, because we was on a molten wobbly liquid millions of years ago, and it's become hard.
The people that have put the science into place, they've all been Freemasons, like Isaac Newton, the thing is, from North Wales, you can see the Isle of Man lighthouse on a clear day. It should be 1,200 feet over the curve.
Okay.
That's just one of many examples.
Yeah. I've seen ships disappearing over the horizon.
You can bring them back in. I've got a really powerful camera. Ship will disappear. You're on a tripod. You can bring it back in. It's all the eye's perception. It hasn't disappeared and it hasn't went over a curve. It's just went out of where we can see. It can be brought back in.
I still think we're on a sphere though.
There's footage from the Dura building in Dubai, or one of the,
This is the big
tallest
tall tower.
yeah. Looking, and you can see the oval shape.
That's because they're using GoPro cameras with oval lenses.
Fish on
Yes.
I know it's speculation, but from your research, do you think the moon's orbit is being kept there so you get this lovely lunar eclipse? Do you think the moon is hollow, and if so, why? And do you think there are moon bases on the other dark side of the moon, and if so, who are they?
Okay, number of questions. I'll try and address each one.
All questions in one.
Okay, my conclusion would be, first of all, about alien bases on the moon. I know that I poo-pooed a lot of material tonight, this afternoon, but I'm presenting the case for it. So why am I poo-pooing a lot of material? Well, I'm poo-pooing a lot of material because there's a lot of rubbish out there. So what I'm trying to do is sort of say, this is that, and now this is this. And now I'll explain why I think there could be lunar bases over there. If you think of the military, we've gone to Afghanistan, we've flown out and had a war, and then we've come back again. But what do? We leave bases out there, don't we? We have local bases around the world. We've had some everywhere there's a skirmish, we leave a base there in case it gets hot again and we need to be there quick. So in 1982 we had the Falklands War. So we built a base on the runway in the Falklands, Port Stanley and all that kind of stuff. We've had bases now in Cyprus, we've had bases in Germany, Afghanistan, different regions of the world where there's been hotspots and we've made a base permanently there. It saves the military a lot of money, time and expense. Keep trolling all that equipment backwards and forwards. Each time they just say, well, let's stick something here and let's have people here. It would follow that logic that if there's aliens or someone, ET, whatever you want to call it, even maybe people from Earth, I don't know, that if they want to observe us, rather than keep flying through wormholes or black holes or whatever to get to us billions of light years away or wherever they come from, it would make sense to me that they would put a base on our moon to observe us. That way, they're only like, I don't know, I mean, they say it's 3 hours to take a craft from Earth, you know, going at rocket speed. I'd imagine they could do it a lot quicker. They could be here in maybe a split second or something. But it makes sense that they would have a base on the moon to keep an eye on us. And also, lunar regolith supposedly has got lots of things that they can utilise from it. You know, lots of materials that can be used in some way. And we talked about Ingo Swann, and these people seem to be taking the moon soil and taking it for some reason. They might use it for something, you know, construction or energy or something like that. So there's possible reasons why they would be there. So that kind of stands up to kind of a logic that that's why there might be an alien base there. What's the rest of your questions?
Who are they?
Who are they? That's the big if. Who are they? Are they people from Earth? Have we already got a secret base there, secret space technology? Are they aliens? Is it a cooperation maybe between Earth people and aliens that have got a base there? There may be that as well. It's pure speculation, can't prove it at all, but we haven't got enough information to make a solid conclusion.
Do you think that the moon's orbit's been kept there over the millennia, centuries?
Well, the book that I mentioned about the moon by Christopher Knight and Alan Watson, I think his name was, the book at the beginning, they came to some conclusions about the book, about the moon. All these mathematics, it's this distance and it's, you know, it's been around, it's got all these kind of, it's almost too perfect, they said. It's too perfect to be there, it shouldn't be there. And so they came to the conclusion that maybe the moon was built by someone. They came to three conclusions. Was it made there by God? Was it put there by God? Was it put there by aliens? Or was it put there by humans in the future? Which is a weird one. And what they said about the third theory was that in the far off future, we've discovered that if the moon's drifted out, or no, I don't know, it's something to do with the fact that they need the moon to sort of keep humanity going. So they've constructed the moon in the future and brought it back in time. It's a pretty wild thing, but this is what they said. They've come back in time, or gone right further back in time, constructed the moon for us to keep humanity going, to keep everything stable, so that it safeguards the future of mankind going onwards. That was something like that. I'm saying it in a very simplified manner, but that was the conclusion they came to in their book. If you want to know about it, it was maybe buy the book, Who Built the Moon. It's very interesting.
Or to keep it locked in the moon matrix.
The moon matrix, that's right. There's some wild theories going about the moon. I mean, there was some guy saying about that when we die, our souls go out of our body and there's a transmitter on the moon that sucks all our souls to the moon. I forget who said it now, some John Lear, I think, the guy that talked about this, yeah. And you're thinking, what? It's like crazy stuff out there. So, try and keep a level head when you think about this stuff. And there's so many ideas you can think of. What is this? What is that? You can postulate so much about it, but you just have to look at the evidence and sort of, you come up to maybe basic conclusions rather than go to wild ones. Yeah, there could be a base on the moon. We don't know why they're there, possibly, but they've probably got an interest in us, and we probably have an interest in them. But having said that, I think there's possibly also bases on the Earth as well. Not necessarily from the same alien race, okay? So that's another thing. Are we drawing to a close now?
Yes, I think we'll call it a day there. Thanks very much, people, for your cooperation, for your attendance and everything. And just before we finish, Maureen's got a
little present for you.
Oh, goodness me.
You know how we love to give you
Oh,
presents.
we love presents, yeah.
The last time you came, you did a talk on fairies, ghosts and spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So your presents have got a fairies, ghosts and spirit thing, right? So we've got you some cards,
Oh, bless
fairy
you, thank
cards,
you so much.
and some fairy pictures.
Oh, Brian Froud.
Thought you might like that.
Yeah, thank you so much
The
indeed.
tin's basically empty, but there's a little thing inside.
Oh, right,
So if
okay.
you'd like to open it, the thing inside.
Moon rock?
No.
Oh.
It's an owl.
It's an owl! That's an owl. Oh, thank you so much.
Owls
Bless
mean-
you. Thank you.
I know owls mean so much
They
to
do.
you.
Do you guys know the story of the owl? Did I tell you the last time? Is there time to tell them?
Yeah,
that?
you can tell them.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. I'll tell you this very, very quickly then, okay? Because it's nothing to do with the moon or anything like that. This is more of a mystical thing and related really to my first talk, but we never went into it. Where do I start? Okay, my ex-wife Alison got pregnant and she had a miscarriage, and this is back in the mid-90s, and she was really, really worried. When she got pregnant again, she thought she was going to have another miscarriage. And she said on the moon does come into it, she goes, on a full moon, a night after the miscarriage, she said that she woke up in the middle of the night and she said this owl woman, literally an owl woman with owl wings and an owl face, flew through the room, and it flew over her head. She felt the feathers brush over her face and the wind on her face, and it went screeching over her head, but it had a female body and went out through the window. And anyway, we woke up the next day and she told me all about it, and I said, oh, you probably just had a dream or something like that, a nightmare. But she looked all through these pagan books that we'd got at the time, and it said that the nearest thing that we could find to it was this Hecate goddess who came in the form of an owl and took the souls of the unborn children back to where they came from, spirit world or wherever. And so we kind of went with that idea that maybe that's what it was. I didn't really believe in goddesses, but I said, well, yeah, okay, fair enough, that's what's happened. And anyway, a few months later, my wife got pregnant again. I definitely was the father this time. So, she was really, really worried that she was going to have another miscarriage. And then I had a dream. And in the dream, I was walking along with Alison, my ex-wife, through this wood, and I saw a little barn owl on a tree. And it was injured, and it had a bad foot. And I somehow flew up to the tree in the dream, and I said, let's take it to the vets. So in the dream, I took this barn owl to the vets, and the vet said, let's have a look at it, and he repaired it, and he said, let's give it a little test flight. So the barn owl flew out the window, and it was promptly eaten by a huge albatross-type bird with big beak, and swallowed it whole, and went, oh no, my pet barn owl. And I flew up to the albatross, trying to get my barn owl out of the jaws of this big albatross, and all that came out were 2 feathers. And I walked back so despondent, I've lost my barn owl that I rescued. And as I was walking back home, another barn owl came and landed on my shoulder. And I went, oh my God, it's my barn owl, it's back. And something said, no, it's not the same barn owl, this is a different one. And so the barn owl flew off, and somehow I could fly off with it like astral travelling. And I flew alongside this barn owl in the dream, side by side, looking over the towns and the village, and I felt so spiritually happy. It was reminiscent of the Snowman film with the boy flying alongside the snowman. That's the best description I could give. So with that, when I woke up and Alison said that she was really worried that she was going to have a miscarriage, I said, no, 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 you're not going to have a miscarriage, it's going to be okay. And I told her the whole dream, and I said the first barn owl was the first miscarriage you had, and it had been eaten by a larger bird, so it's been absorbed back into its greater self, its greater identity. And the new barn owl that landed on my shoulder and me flying off with it shows that we're going to have adventure over the earth together, on earth. And I said, I know that this baby's going to be born, and my daughter was born. Now, we started to have strange barn owl experiences, strange coincidences. We'd be driving along the road, and sitting in the middle of the road was a barn owl just waiting, and it wasn't budging. And so we thought, what do we do? We're waiting there with the engine ticking over, the headlamps illuminating this barn owl, just watching us. So we tooted the horn, and the barn owl just flew up and flew straight over the car like that. And we started to get really strange coincidences, all to do with barn owls after that. And anyway, my daughter was a very small baby in the womb, and they said they wanted to induce her to make her grow bigger on the outside. So we were booked into the hospital, and she was born, or induced if you like to be born, on August the 15th, 1995. I later found out that in Italy they have a day of celebration for the goddess Hecate on August the 15th. Which is the date that she was born on, so I thought that's weird. And anyway, when she was born, my wife was then taken down, or upstairs I think, upstairs to the postnatal room to recover. And she said, oh, I've left some of my bags downstairs in the delivery room. I said, don't worry, I'll go and get them. So rather than just take the lift, I thought it's just easier to run down the stairs. And as I was about to go down the stairs, there was this heavily pregnant woman coming up the stairs with her boyfriend or husband. And as I passed them on the stairs, I heard her say to her partner, when are we going to see your friend that's got that pet barn owl? And I thought, oh my God, what's the chances of that? You know, freaky or what? So I couldn't believe it. Then a day or two later, while still at the hospital, because my daughter was still in hospital with my wife, some friends of ours came to visit us. Now they knew nothing of this barn owl prediction, this strange things that we was having with the barn owl. And they said, we've got a little present for you, for the baby. And we said, oh lovely. It was something wrapped in tissue about that big, so we unwrapped it, and there's a little candle in the shape of a barn owl. And we thought, oh my God, again, because they didn't know nothing about this dream, and here is another barn owl being presented to us. Again, what's going on? So as our daughter got older, we told her this story, that we said, you know, this Hecate goddess person maybe took the first baby away, and you're the one that it brought back, sort of thing, and stuff like that. And I painted a picture for it, and Alison, my ex-wife, she wrote a little play about it. We were featured on a Channel 4 documentary about it. And we got on holiday to Devon, and it was a camping holiday, and my daughter was about 3 years old by this point. And Alison decided to go and have a shower in the camp toilets, and I was washing up after our tea, you know, and you're outside, and Morgan was standing there, my daughter, with me, and then she suddenly hid under my leg, wrapped her arms around my leg, and she hid there, saying, Daddy, I'm scared, I'm frightened. And I said, what's the matter, what's the matter? And she goes, I can see Hecate. I said, what do you mean you can see Hecate? She goes, she's over there in a clump of trees. And I said, well, what does she look like? She goes, she's got scary eyes and she's looking at us. I went, oh. So I thought, what do I say to that? So I said, well, I said, maybe she's just come to see if we're having a nice holiday. So I said, don't worry, it'll be fine. And she goes, oh, she's gone now. And then she relaxed and she was okay. And then Alison came back from the showers, and I said to her, you're not going to be nervous. And I had to whisper it very subtly to her. I said, Morgan has just seen Hecate. Now, unbeknown to Morgan or anybody else, Alison was pregnant again. And Morgan had just seen Hecate, and then that very night, Alison had a miscarriage. And it's like Hecate had come to take the next one, and yet Morgan had seen it. So there we go. That's the weird Hecate barn owl experience, and so that's why I've got the barn.
Thank you for sharing that personal story.
Thank you. pleasure. I've enjoyed every second of it. Thank you for inviting
What
me
a